Hey everybody, how's it going? Just going to tweet and let people know that it's live now. And then we can get going. Okay, so what I was hoping to do today is I would really like to make like a series of kind of free tutorials on building out an interface with Tailwind, and something that's like pretty well sort of structured and organized so that I can refer people to it. So we have like some good content out there for people to sort of learn how to get started with the framework. But I haven't had time to like plan that out or work on it yet. So I was going to do that this afternoon, and I thought, well, why don't I just live stream while I do that and kind of get things figured out, and we can just kind of do it here. And then maybe next week or over the holidays, I'll kind of redo that and turn it into something a little bit more polished and structured in a handful of videos. Okay, so yeah, so we've got Coinbase open here for reference. We're going to just try and build something that looks basically just like this and see how we kind of structure it and put it together. So what I've done to get started is I've created an empty Laravel application just because it's kind of the easiest way for me to get started with Webpack and PostCSS and all that stuff. And it makes it nice if we need to pull in any dynamic data or anything. So I've got that started. I've got Tailwind installed via NPM. And the next step here is just to kind of wire that up with Mix and see what we can do. So let's go ahead and tell Mix that we want to use PostCSS instead of Sass. So I go resources, assets, CSS, app.css, that'll go to public. And we could specify options here in that call, but since I want to make sure it's available to view and stuff like that, if we ever need to do any of that, it's better to do that down here. So we'll add Tailwind here. And we got to make sure that we generate a Tailwind config file. It's a little interface that seemed like a good candidate. So we'll do Tailwind init, generate a Tailwind.js file that we'll just keep here in the root. We won't edit it at all to start. We'll just kind of use version this stuff so that it's easy for us to pull in with the Mix helper. And let's just build it and see what happens. I have no idea how long this stream will be. I have no idea how far we're going to get either. So we'll just kind of work on it for a while and see what happens here. So this dependency was not found. Oh yeah, we got to make the CSS file. Duh. Okay, so let's take let's just move this to CSS, app.css. We'll delete the Sass folder. Nobody needs Sass. Just do plain old. I'm using the camera microphone of my iMac Mac. You sure about that? It says that I'm using my audio interface. I don't know, seems correct here. Oh, maybe you're right. A little bit weird. I got a new audio interface since I last streamed, so I'm not sure what's going on here. Does it actually seem like that? Yeah, it's using the wrong one. Weird. Okay. Yeah, that's really bizarre, actually, and kind of annoying. I don't know why telling it to use that would one, but shitty. Okay, that's really bugging me. So I'm going to delete this audio input capture and we'll add another one. And we'll set this to the USB interface. It's still using the wrong one. So that sucks. OBS is junk. Always problems. So this stuff should all be set up properly. I'm not sure why it's complaining here. Yeah, it definitely seems like the wrong thing, I think, so bummer. Taylor's right. Man, this is actually really depressing. I don't know how I'm gonna get past this. Like, if I just switch to different ones, is it randomly going to start working? You know what I mean? Like, this is really quite horrid. It shouldn't be system preferences related, but why don't we just set the default input device to be the audio interface and just see what happens. We'll just delete this and okay, let's see. We'll set it to default. Is this better? This should be better now. Okay, weird. That's annoying. Open source software. Can't be trusted. Only left channel. Okay, will resolve. Downmix to mono. Tracks 1. Is this better? Yep. Should be better now. And normally I have to bump up the gain a little bit because it's usually a little bit too quiet. So how about we do something like this, and then you let me know if this seems to be pretty good these days. Yeah, we're in good shape now. Excellent. Jesus Christ. Okay. So, do we have CSS loading and stuff now? We do. We have some Tailwind CSS being pulled in, finally. Okay, so now we can actually write some code, finally. Holy crap. All right, so this is what we're trying to build. We're going to try and make it look pretty good. We're going to try and copy as many things as we can. The only thing I'm kind of intimidated by is doing like the charting stuff, because we're going to have to pull in a library for that, and I don't know any of them really well. So that part might be slow, so we might push that off until maybe later, or until another stream. But we can kind of get the bones in to start anyway. So first thing, why don't we look at it from like the mobile view? And maybe we can kind of mimic that to start, kind of take a mobile first approach. So it looks like we have kind of like a header with, you know, some links. So let's start by creating like a little header here. So I'm going to create like a main div that's not the body in case we need to add view sort of stuff. So it's nice to have a little wrapper element here. So let's have a header div here. Inside of this div, we're going to have the typical 3 lines hamburger menu thing. So I've been using in typo icons today for this sort of thing. So let's see if we can grab a 3-line. I think it's called bars. No? All right, let's pull it up here. If we go to end typo. See what we can find. Site loads really slow for a static site that just shows some SVG icons. It's quite unusual. Do they have like a hamburger menu sort of thing here so we don't have to just like build one? Definitely is like a strong candidate for SVG. There it is. What what do they call it? They call it menu. All right, logical. So we'll just copy that and throw it into this SVG folder so we have it for reference. Okay. All right, so heading back here, heading back to the browser, we need to do some like flexboxy stuff here by the looks of it, right? So we're going to have like a section over here where like our menu is going to be, and we're going to have a section here where like the brand is going to be, and then there's going to be a section here that looks like it's just like an avatar with like a drop down thing, right? So in here, let's drop in that menu SVG. We'll just kind of get the basics in place first here. So we'll just grab the whole SVG element itself here and just stick the whole thing in line and style it in a minute. And we're going to call this Coin Toad. I don't know if I'm allowed to call it Coinbase on the stream. So it seems reasonable to just call it something else. And the most reliable avatar link that I can usually find is my GitHub one. So we'll just grab my GitHub avatar image so that this works consistently. Just kind of leech off GitHub's resources. And let's just see how terrible this currently looks. Yeah, so this is looking pretty close to the Coinbase UI at this point. So we're getting really close. So let's see here. So we've got some blue up here. I think that's going to be pretty close to Tailwind's blue dark background color. So let's go with blue dark. Let's make this display flex since we're going to need to have all this stuff in line. And we could use justify space between, but unless these are going to be the exact same width, that's not going to always guaranteed center this. So I think a better approach would be to use width helpers here. So why don't we maybe make the left one like, maybe we'll do like 1/6 or a quarter, a half and a quarter. That'll probably work too. We just need to make sure that we have more room than we actually need. Okay, so we'll add some width helpers here. And this is going to need to be centered. Okay, so we're getting closer. So let's throw some white text on this. And let's make sure that we add some classes to our HTML here. We're going to want font sans so that we get like a reasonable default font here. And I think we're going to want to make sure that we center all these elements vertically with each other. So let's just do items center. And figure out what size we want some of this stuff to be. So I'm not going to try and get it bang on perfect, pixel perfect, because I don't want to spend too much time changing our config to match Coinbase's. But I think we should be able to get pretty close without it. So this SVG, we're going to need to use fill current, because we want it to match the current text color, and then we can use text color utilities to style it as white. And we're going to also want to set the size of it. So let's just give it a size of maybe like 6 and see if that's close. It's not close, so we'll go with 8. And I don't know, maybe 10. These bars are not quite as nice as the Coinbase ones. They're a little heavy, but I think this is probably going to be pretty decent. So we're going to need some padding on the outer edges of this nav. So why don't we add like a PX6, see where that gets us. It's a little too much. Let's try PX4. That seems probably going to be pretty close, and we need vertical padding that looks like it's going to be the same as the horizontal padding. So let's just change this to just straight up P4. All right, so now this image is of course way too big. So let's set the image to be, it's probably going to be the same size as we have for this SVG, but can't know that for sure until we try it, depending on how that SVG fits into its view box. So let's make this display block because it's on its own anyways. And we're going to want to make sure that the items in here are aligned to the right. So actually, let's do inline block so that we can use text right. Okay, so that's looking decent. I think it's probably too big though, so let's switch it to 8 instead of 10. That's looking probably closer. So we're going to want to round that fully, right? So we can say rounded full to add a circular border. And the coin toad logo is going to need to be bigger. So why don't we wrap that? I don't think we need to wrap it in a span, actually. Try text 2XL here. Seems pretty close. 3XL is probably going to be too big. Yeah, let's go with 2XL. Okay. Their blue is a little bit brighter than our blue, but that's okay. And so you can see already we're off by a couple pixels in terms of height, but I think it's pretty close. So for their background, it looks like they've got like a light gray background for the whole page. So let's add that to our body tag. We'll say BG gray lighter. Yeah, that seems like pretty close. And then I don't want to design this menu yet because I don't want to do kind of like the interactive bit. But maybe what would be interesting is to kind of see, like, now that we have a sort of responsive version of this menu built, what do we have to change to kind of get that working responsively? So it looks like the main differences here. Let's put these two in the same window here so we can see. So it looks like we have to kind of get rid of the hamburger thing, right? And the whole thing has to go into a container of some kind. And then we have some more information that needs to show up next to this avatar. So let's see how we would do that responsively. So here's our nav. I think since this has to go in a container now, we actually need to add another wrapper element. So this wrapper element is going to be where we define the background color, and then the flexbox stuff is going to stay on the child element. And this padding 4, I think we actually are going to want to probably just make that vertical padding, because you can see there's actually no padding compared to the other stuff. So we're going to want whatever padding that we have for the container that we use for everything is probably going to be the same there. Okay, so we'll make this a container, and we'll do MX Auto and PX4. And part of me wants to make this a separate div just because it's nice to sort of separate the responsibilities a little bit of what the containers are for. So right now, like, you look at this as PX4 and PY4, you think, well, why don't we collapse that down to just P4? Well, you could, but there's going to be other situations that don't have PY4 that still need PX4, and I'd like to kind of see this pattern stay consistent whenever we try to make this container. So to me, I think it makes the most sense to do things this way, where we have an outer div that kind of specifies the color, then we have a container for some stuff, and now in that container we happen to put a flex div that contains like the navigation. Okay, so you know, that's looking okay, I think, and I think our responsive, our mobile version 1 is still the same, so that's solid. Okay, so Coinbase's responsive kind of stuff is not great. You can see, like, they have a mobile view and they have a desktop view, but here there's like horizontal scrolling. I think we can sort of improve on that. So why don't we just have it be like this on really small screens, but maybe like at small and above, which I think is like 500 pixels or something in Tailwind 576. So like here and above, we'll switch back to the standard menu, which I think is going to work out okay. So let's add some changes here. So this element that shows the hamburger, we want that to disappear at small screens. So why don't we do SM hidden to have that actually just disappear. And did that affect the vertical padding? It looks like it did, which is a little bit of a bummer. So it looks like this element is like the biggest element and was dictating the height of the nav bar. I don't really like to do explicit heights on things. I like things to be done as like based just kind of like on the content, you know? So it kind of sucks that this is the largest element and that this is controlling the height of this container. Because as soon as we delete this element, the whole thing gets shorter, which sucks. We'll just roll with it for now, and we can maybe think of another solution later. Okay, so at small screens, things are looking okay. This right now obviously looks bizarre, right? It seems kind of weird that it seems so narrow, because the container class should actually make this quite big. So if you look, we have a flex container where this is hidden. This is set to width 1/2, and this is set to width 1/4, which is why it's not reaching all the way to the edges. So this thing that's set to width 1/2, if we look at like the full version here, at this point it doesn't really matter what the widths of these elements are. So why don't we just set the width of each one of these to auto at small screens. So we'll say width auto, width auto. And now I think what's going to happen is it might actually just work. No. Okay, so I think we also have to make sure that this is set to, we have two choices here. We can either have this element grow with Flexbox to fill up the space, or we can switch to justify content space between to kind of push everything aside. So I think that's maybe a good way to go here. Why don't we just say, at small screens and larger, we should justify content space between. Okay, so now we have kind of like this responsive version, and it's like looking pretty decent, except for the fact that the height changes, which is somewhat grim, but I think I can deal with it. And part of me wants to actually solve that problem by just making that icon smaller, which I think is what I'm going to do. Because if the icon was drawn a bit differently, okay, now the height stays the same, so I feel better about that. Okay, cool. Coin toad is in progress here. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is maybe add... I don't want to do this part because we can't show it unless we click on it, which means we're going to go down this view rabbit hole. But maybe that would be interesting, but why don't we kind of get the bones in place first? But let's still add the name and the chevron there. So after this image tag, we're going to have my name, and there's going to be a chevron, and I have a chevron icon that we can use here. Now these, of course, we want to be able to hide together, so we should put these probably in a span. So this is going to be hidden by default, and then on small screens, it's probably going to come out to display block, which really doesn't really matter what type of display we put on it because we're going to have to make this a flex container anyways. And it makes me kind of want to wrap this image tag. Maybe we'll do these in divs, to be honest, instead of spans, since they're not going to be display inline anyways, so there's no real reason to do that. Okay, so yeah, obviously this isn't right. Now, this SVG needs to go next to my name, and it needs to be small. So let's wrap my name in a span. The SVG, what should we do with that? Let's try just doing a flexbox sort of thing here. Small items center. I'll add a class to this, fill current, text white, which might be too bright. We'll have to actually see what that's supposed to be. And it looks like I can't even see it at all. Oh, because Flexbox, now that this has no size, that's going to be a problem. So we should wrap this because we don't want the flex shrink behavior and stuff to affect it in any weird ways. So we'll just add a H4, W4, get that showing up. And let's do a display block on this, which will help with the vertical alignment because it'll remove the impact of line height on that. Okay, so do text white here. Let's compare to Coinbase. So they actually have like a semi-transparent chevron. So let's do that. Let's set the opacity of this to like 75. 50. Okay, and they have things spaced out a little bit, but not too much, and their text is smaller than ours. Or at least thinner. I wonder what font weight we're getting by default here. Just 400. Okay, so let's make it a little bit smaller text. So we'll set this to text small. Seems okay. They're using Avener for their font, which we could switch to Avener if we wanted to. I don't know. Maybe we should do that. Why not? I'll show you how to edit the font family. So if we look at font sans, let's just add Avener next as the first item in the list. And that should rebuild. One thing that's interesting about working with Tailwind is I didn't even have Webpack watching, and it didn't matter because we're not changing the CSS really ever. So okay, so now we're using Avener, which makes me want to change the weight of that logo a little bit. So let's set this to maybe like font semi-bold, something like that. That's too much. Medium. It seems okay. Okay, so let's add a little bit of space between all these elements here. So maybe we'll do like a margin right of like 2. How's that? That's too much. Try 1. Seems okay. And then we'll do the same thing between the avatar and this block. Now, we could add a margin right here that's responsive, but I think probably the better thing to do is just add a margin left on this that matches it, because this item's hidden by default, which means that its margin won't affect that, and that's not enough in that case. So let's do 2. Yeah, that feels pretty close. Okay, so did that break any of our responsive stuff? No, we're still in good shape as far as the mobile view is concerned. So that's pretty nice. Yeah, once I'm done this and it's done in like a sane way, because like as you can tell right now, I'm just kind of figuring out what I'm even doing here. But this is just a learning experience for me for this particular design. And once I kind of like have figured out like a nice clean way to get through it without a lot of stumbling and trying different things, I'm going to make some kind of cleaner tutorials on it, and I'll open source the whole template and project so you can clone it down and play with it and stuff like that. And we'll link to it from the Tailwind site probably too. Okay, so that feels like a good first step for that top nav. So why don't we work on this like secondary nav? So that's not going to be in this container or in this blue dark thing anymore, right? So why don't we just add a couple comments here so we kind of know what's going on. This is sort of the navigation area. This is sort of the top nav. And then we're going to have like a secondary nav underneath that div. And that's going to be white. So let's just do .bg white, .container, .mxauto, .px4, and let's just stick some crap in there just so we can see it show up. And it does show up. It looks like they either have a border or a really subtle shadow there. I think it's a border. So let's try doing a border B. And that seems like to be pretty close. And it looks like we're probably going to have padding as well, but I think this padding is going to be applied to each one of these items, not to the actual container, because you can see each one of these needs a border that needs to be active. So we can't really have padding on the container and still have the border show up at the bottom. So we'll have to do that on each individual item. So naturally we'll have a flex container because Flexbox makes everything easier. It'll make it easier to get these items aligned without using inline block. Even though inline block would work totally fine, with inline block you have to worry about white space in the DOM, which makes it harder to finally control the margins, and it means that changing the markup affects the margins in weird ways. Using Flexbox, these will all be butted right up against each other by default, and we can just use the margin utilities to control the space between them, which is a little bit nicer. So we're going to have some items here. So in this first one, there's going to be an icon, and then it's going to say dashboard. So let's grab an icon. I found this grid one, which seemed to be close enough. So we'll pull that in and paste that in here, and let's just kind of see what we got. Okay, so it's not quite the same. They have this kind of cool offset thing, but for our purposes, it's going to work just great. So let's add a class here. We'll just give it an arbitrary width and height of 4 is 1 rem, which will be good enough to get us started. And it looks like by default, those icons look like they're the same color as the text. In our case, we're doing the active one, which is blue. So we'll roll with our blue color. So we'll say text blue dark. It actually, we can just do that on the parent div here because it's going to be the same color for the text. All right, so that icon needs to be bigger. And we're going to want to center these with each other. Man, the icon doesn't look as nice as the actual Coinbase one. So we'll make this display flex as well. Item center. And it looks like we're going to need some margin next to this. So we'll do MR, maybe 2. That's probably sort of close. Yeah, these colors are not as bright as Coinbase's colors, but that's okay. So each one of these items is going to need to have some vertical padding. And it looks like it's about, I don't know, we'll start with 4 and see how that looks. Seems pretty close. So let's roll with that. And the active one has a bottom border that matches, right? So we can say that this item has a border B, border blue, dark. Now the difference you're going to notice here is that this border, it's subtle, but this border is on top of that gray border, whereas in Coinbase, they are overlapping. So we can achieve that by adding negative margin to our actual flex container here, I think. Let's try it. Negative MB pixel to pull it up by 1 pixel. Yeah, so now we've got that overlapping stuff, which is good. I could have grabbed the Coinbase icons, but it's kind of fun to do it with free resources, just to kind of show like how decent we can make it look without purely stealing someone else's assets that they actually, had a designer that they paid to work on it. Do we have a hover state on this? Not really. It's just kind of the cursor. So let's make this an actual link element since it needs to be clickable. And we're going to want to get rid of any default link styling. So we'll just do no underline. And now at least we get the pointer cursor and it acts like a link. Okay, so we'll do the same thing for buy, sell, accounts, tools, and settings now. So let's just duplicate this to start. And buy/sell. Now this one is not going to be blue. And we need a different icon. I found this swap icon, which looked, again, from in typo, and it seemed close enough. So we'll just copy these classes. And let's just see what we have, and we can kind of figure out the positioning and stuff. So obviously that's not good. So this is going to need to be a flex container. We'll make that its own container. Oops. Okay, so obviously we need some spacing between those. It looks like it's probably about maybe like an MR6 or an MR8. Let's give that a go. Space those out. Yeah, MR6 feels about right. We're going to want to go with, let's see. So we have a hover state where it gets a border, but otherwise the color doesn't change or anything. So let's set the text color to maybe like text gray dark, something like that. Their grays are bluer than our grays, which is fine. Ours are too dark. Let's try text gray. So Tailwind 0.4, which I'm probably going to release tomorrow, has nicer grays than Tailwind 0.3, which we're using right now. But that's okay. So we don't want a bottom border unless we're hovered, right? So the problem is if we get rid of this bottom border, if I'm not mistaken, things are going to jump out of alignment. Do you see how this jumped down a pixel because the bottom border was gone? That means that the baseline of these two lines of text is not quite bang on anymore. One of them is 1 pixel lower than the other. So what we really want to do is we want to keep the bottom border, but we want to default it to being transparent. And then on hover, we want it to be gray dark to match the text color. Okay, so now things are aligned, and when we hover, we get that border back, which is nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and add accounts, tools, and settings, which this is going to be like fairly mechanical at this point. Accounts, tools, settings. So we'll have accounts, tools, and after this, let's figure out what happens with this on the responsive side of things. So it looks like we need to have some MR6 to all but the last one here. And they each have their own icons. So accounts is the wallet icon here. So let's grab that one. And actually, let's just grab the path from inside of it. So that way we can keep all of our classes. Okay. So that should give us a wallet icon. And the next one is tools, which I think is this briefcase icon that I found. So we'll pull that in. Copy just the path so it's a little bit easier. And then finally, settings, which is a cog. So copy that path. See what we get. Okay. So, I mean, it's looking pretty close. Colors are a little different. Which of course we could customize, so that's no big deal. But, you know, it's not too bad, really. Our icons are a little bit bigger. So I might be inclined to drop the size of those, although their dashboard one seems like disproportionately big compared to their others. Or maybe ours is just disproportionately small the way it's been drawn, which is a bit of a bummer, but that's okay. Let's change all these to H or to 4. Just kind of see where that gets us. We might want to size in between. Things don't feel spaced out enough anymore. Yeah, it's weird how that dashboard one works there. I don't want to make the dashboard one a different size than the others, so we'll just roll with it for now. We can always improve it later. Okay, so let's figure out what happens at the smaller screen sizes. So it just goes away, but it actually collapses down into here. Two ways we could solve that. We could either have it kind of show up in here. I think, how do I think this should work? You could either duplicate the markup, right, and put it inside that container, or we could just sort of responsively tweak some things. So why don't we look at this responsive one, which is obviously trash, and let's just make this look like this one's open state, and then we'll just hide it by default on small screens. So we know that we're kind of there, but no big deal. So where we have this as BG white, we know that's actually just for small screens. So normally it should be BG blue dark, and this bottom border is also only going to be for small screens. So now we got this ugly blue. Here where we have this set to display flex, we actually know that should only be on small screens too, and things should stack. Here where we have this set to text blue dark, we actually know that should also be only on small screens, and by default this should be text white. And then for these other ones, these should actually be like semi-transparent. So we should have a small text grade dark. So let's just highlight all these. So that should only be on small screens. And it certainly shouldn't be purple. It's weird how it's coming in purple, actually. Quite bizarre. Not sure where that color's coming from. And this should be text white, opacity 50 maybe. But then on small screens, it should always be opacity 100. So let's put those in the same order. Okay, so we got that, and then it jumps to this. That seems like pretty close. What's their hover state actually like? It looks like they still just add that ugly gray underline, which is not how I would do it, I don't think, but that's fine. Let's do ours differently than that. Instead of having a ugly gray underline on hover, let's improve it. And we'll use like an opacity state. So on small screens, we want hover border gray dark. But on normal screens, we actually want hover opacity 100. Say something like that. And actually, I don't think I have hover opacity utilities. So I'll show you something else that we can do with Tailwind. So if you look at our Tailwind config file, and we look for the opacity module. You can see by default it's just responsive. Let's also add hover variants for opacity. So this should rebuild, and now when that's done, now we have like hover states for that, which is cool. So they're not perfect, but they're not too far off. So let's update this such that this menu, the secondary menu, is hidden by default on smaller screens. But on small screens and above, it goes back to being display block. So it's hidden, comes back here. Yeah, not bad. Okay, cool. Is this not white? I don't think they have a white background here, but we could make that gray lightest. Yeah, that actually seems closer. Okay. All right, that's fine. So the next thing that we want to look at is this kind of section. Okay, so we'll skip this chart for now. Let's just kind of build it as if that's not there. Can I seriously not even select anything? Is that how they've done this? Now I have to find it myself. I'll just kind of delete this element so that's not a distraction for us. Looks like someone's using scoped styles. Does this really have a fixed height? Gruesome. Oh, you know what the problem is? It's something got messed up with the JavaScript where they have this subtle overlay that's supposed to kick in when this is open, but we're seeing it in the reverse state. Okay, so let's just refresh. Something went wrong naturally. There's always something wrong with Coinbase. And now I can get back to here more easily, which is nice. So we can delete this container. We can delete this container and the dates. And find the element with the fixed height and get rid of that. And we'll just mimic kind of this view, which is a little bit easier. So now we can go back to making our thing white, which seemed odd to me that that wasn't going to be the correct move. Okay, so let's create like this card here. So we're going to need to, underneath our navigation area, we need another section. And this time I think we can just make it a straight up container right away. Container MX Auto PX4. Okay. All right. So we need a card kind of thing with a border and like a subtle box shadow. So let's do that. So add a div that's BG white, border, rounded, shadow, hello, whatever, trash. It's kind of okay. So we got some margin underneath here. So one thing we have to make a decision about is what is causing that margin. Is it this navigation that has a bottom margin, or is it this card that has a top margin, or is it a bigger container that has a top padding? Sometimes the easiest way to tell is just by kind of looking at different responsive versions. So it's clearly not a bottom margin on this that's causing the problem. It could be perceived as a bottom margin on the navigation. I think looking at it, I'm inclined to perceive it as a padding on an internal container instead. So why don't we add like a PY4 here too, which is not enough. So add like a PY6 maybe. Another way you can sort of tell is when we shrink the height of this. Actually, they have more padding at the bottom than they do at the top. So let's change this to like PT6 and then like PB12. Actually, I think 8 is the biggest one we get by default. So yeah, okay, not too bad. All right, so now we have this top section, which is going to be some more Flexbox goodness, I think. So we'll make like a flex container here. It's going to have justify content space between, justify space, or justify between. And then it's got two sections. It's got the section with the different currencies and then the section with sort of the timeline. So I have a div for the currencies, a div for the timeline. So inside the first one, we're going to have a div that, says Bitcoin. And then it's got, what is the HTML character code for like the bullet point? HTML bullet point. It's like circular bullet and bull. I thought there was another one. I think there's another one. Let's see though. I guess we'll use that one. And bull. Okay. No biggie. Could use SVG for that too if we want to get really fancy. And bull. And then Canadian dollars. There's a lot of Bitcoins. So that's what? Let's 21,380.01. Let's see how much it changes by the time we stop this stream. And it looks like we got the same sort of thing here where the padding is being controlled by these items rather than being controlled by the container. So let's give this like a vertical padding of 4. See how it looks. It's probably pretty close. Yeah, see that dot doesn't look right. So there might be another type. HTML bullet small. Is there another one? I swear there's like an ampersand something else. That's not and bull. Mid dot. Oh yeah. Imagine I just like read the chat. How helpful that would be versus just struggling. There we go. Mid dot. That's what we're looking for. Thank you guys. All right, mid dot. All right, so this one's active. So this is going to be text blue dark. It's going to have border B, border blue dark. We're probably going to have that same negative margin thing going on. It looks like this whole section also has a bottom border. And we'll just roll with the default border color because I think that's what we were using above, and that ended up working out okay. So I think that's going to be fine. Let's add this bottom border elsewhere, actually. We'll do it here. And this way, we can have a negative margin here and have that kind of play nicely. Okay. All right, so do I even need this one? I guess not. 884.80. Damn it, refresh the wrong one. No, I do need that one. That's where our justify content stuff was happening. Okay, so that means this also should be display flex. And probably want like a MR4 here. And this should be text gray dark. And we'll have that same sort of transparent bottom border thing going on, because it shows up with a darker border on hover. So hover, border, gray, dark. Okay, shows up pretty good. Obviously, we got some padding to deal with here, so let's add some horizontal padding to the element that has the bottom border. Shit, refreshing the wrong one again. I think we can do a little bit more. Let's try 6. Feels pretty good. Okay, and then finally Litecoin, which is currently worth 358.24. And we need our margin right here as well. Okay, and we got our hover stuff, but these need to be, technically they're probably buttons, not links. So yeah, we get our button kind of clicky finger, but everything kind of works out okay. To make sure that things aren't all funky in different browsers, safe bet here is to add appearance none, so we don't get any default button styling. Okay, so we want to do this section over here now, which is again going to be quite repetitive, same sort of crap. So I'm just literally going to copy this and we'll replace the contents. So it's going to be an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, all. Okay. 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. All. Do they capitalize all? Yeah. Okay. So all of these need a margin except for the last child. It looks like the text is smaller on those too. Now that is somewhat tricky because it's going to affect the height of the items, but I think we can probably figure out a solution to that. So let's add a text small class here. Looks like it's actually just still working okay, which is nice. So Flexbox is just being magical for us. So let's swap out the 1 hour and 1 month. So we can kind of keep the same sort of active state that I have for the other thing. Dude, what have I done? Closing tags that have a type? Doesn't make any sense. You can't have attributes on a closing tag. Refreshing the wrong thing again. Okay. Cool. So now we want to do kind of this section. All right, so this is, maybe let's see what happens responsively here. So we have price charts show up, and then we have like a switcher show up instead. Okay, so that's interesting, but maybe we'll tackle that once we finish the whole widget. Okay, so underneath this section where we have this border, now we have another section, right? And this is where that stuff's going to go. So naturally, this is going to be display flex. We're going to have, it looks like 3 equal sized columns. So we can do dot width 1/3 and okay, so we can just do 1, 2, 3, kind of see what we got. All right, so there's our 3 equal width columns. Now inside of those, I think we're just going to want to do some fancy text centering. Fancy text centering. Such a fancy feature. And let's just start with this first one. So we're going to have CA, and we're going to need to work our, oh, it went up in price. Better update, 404.74. So let's just paste that in here, and this is going to have to get split up into a couple sections because we have some vertical alignment for some different sort of components of this, right? And different font sizes. So here we're going to do like text like 4XL or something probably. 5XL? Is there a 5XL? Oh, we're getting lucky here. And then for these ones, we probably want to have like a text like 3XL maybe. Seems about right. Should it be a soup element? Is that correct? I thought that was like specifically if you wanted to demarcate, like you have something's like an exponent or something. Because like semantically, it doesn't matter that this is like super text or subtext. It's really just like the visual styling of it, isn't it? I don't know. I'm going to do it with CSS. Something I don't even know with Tailwind is what our vertical align helpers look like, because I literally never use them. Okay, so it's going to be a line top. Seems not quite right, doesn't it? Seems like it should be text top. Let's see. I don't think I have a text top class. So there's super, which that's not right. Why does text top? Oh man, dude, vertical alignment is the most mystifying CSS property. No one can pretend that they truly understand how it behaves. Don't know. So I think we could add like some padding to the top or something to accommodate the fact that it's a little bit lower here. Like here it's like visually aligned with the top of the text, which to me seems nice. I guess like another way to do that maybe is to set the line height to nothing on here. And it's still not quite aligned as I would have expected. See how much line height there is here? If this is set to line height 1. Okay, let's just roll with it looking slightly different then. It's no biggie. Okay, so we're going to want to say Bitcoin price underneath that. So I add like another div here. Bitcoin price. And this is going to be uppercase. Oh yeah, you're right. $sign goes on the other one. Yeah, it's annoying that the tops of these characters aren't aligned. I can't think of a way to do that sanely, though. I'm not going to cheat by looking at their CSS. We're not allowed to do that. So this is going to be like text gray darkest or something, probably. Darker. Yeah, that feels about right. And then this one is going to be text gray, probably something like that, because it's pretty light looking. And we need some tracking on this. Letter spacing. Thought my wife was knocking on my door, but I was incorrect. And of course we need some padding in this container. So maybe like some vertical padding of like 6. Oh, price has dropped again. Okay, so we'll add a border R to this one, a border R to this one. Actually, we can't do it that way, can we? Because the border is actually inside the padding. So the element inside the padding needs the right border. So we actually need to do a border R element here that wraps up these elements. And that's how we're going to get that, like, not complete border. And we need some bottom margin underneath this. It's pretty close. I'll take it. All right, so let's just duplicate this entire thing. Always refreshing the wrong page. Okay, so we need this increase stuff. So we could use a real plus sign, but I kind of feel like that's going to look bad. We might want to use an SVG for that, but let's try it with just a boring plus sign first. So we'll copy this text here, and that'll be this value here. I like how I actually care about getting these numbers right. I don't really care about getting them right, but I care that they are different. So here the percentage, the whole percentage goes inside here, and only the percentage sign goes here. And there's actually no units here. We're just going to have a plus sign. This is going to have a plus sign. Let's have it look hopefully realistic at least. Okay. That's looking okay. So let's make this plus sign green naturally. Span class text green. We could make this have text green at this point, but I think it's wise to keep the structure the same for the sake of symmetry. Gruesome. Why wouldn't that preserve the same text align as the parent? That's a CSS thing I didn't really know about, but that's okay. We'll roll with it. So we got since last month and CID and since last month percentage. So since last month CID. Coinbase uses minus 13 pixels. I think it just threw up. I have no CSS that needs to be built because I haven't even written any CSS. Okay, so we have a double margin on the right here, so let's get rid of that one. Something I've considered adding to Tailwind is like last child helpers, you know, like for stuff that you're doing in loops. It could be kind of cool to do like border R and then like you know, last child border R0. But it's a lot of CSS bloat for something you can control in your templating layer. All right, so this is getting there. So let's move down to this section. Actually, let's do the responsive version of this. So obviously this is terrible. Okay, so this one is interesting because of how drastic the difference is between the two views. So it's going to be tricky for us to take these buttons, basically, you know, and responsively turn them into this drop down. So here where we have this section up here, I think this is where I like to kind of fall back to sort of this nice escape valve with responsive design, where instead of trying to take a single element and style it totally different at different screens, you just swap it out with a totally different element that's already styled the way that you want. So in this case, like I might just have a div here that contains the word price and have this be hidden on screens smaller or larger, have this one be hidden by default but show up on Flexbox or show up at larger screens, right? So then we're going to want to style this in a similar way. So this is going to be text blue dark. It's going to have PY4 and it should say price charts. What am I doing here? And it looks like we need that text to be a little bit bigger. And what are they doing differently here where that stuff's fitting so easily? Is that just spacing? That can't be the only difference. Let's try spacing these ones out, not as far. Yeah, I guess it is just spacing. Something like that, maybe. That still looks okay there. So let's make this price charts text a little bit larger. Although I think I'm actually inclined to not set padding on this and instead do self-center. So that it centers with this text. No, it was better before. PY4 text XL. XL might be too much. Let's try LG. Yeah, so something is a little bit off. Like, oh, you know what it is? A lot of it is that they get rid of the container padding at that size. Okay, so we can do that too. So here where we have PX4, we can actually just make this SMPX4. And we're getting a little bit closer there, but you can see there's like this issue with the rounded corners are still there. So this should only be rounded on small screens and up. And I think we kind of want to get rid of the left and right borders on small screen and up too. So I think we want to say SM border L0, SM border R0. And that should change slightly. Sorry, no, the other way around. We want border T, border B, SM border L, SM border R. Okay, so that's closer. Okay. All right, so obviously this is terrible. So we only want to show the price, and then, so again, I think this is a situation where I would be inclined to, instead of trying to style this section responsively, I think I would just swap out the control. So maybe this one only shows on small screens and up. And we have another alternative one that is displayed on regular screens. And what's it going to need to be? It seems useful for this to be a flex container. Flex, SM hidden. Okay, and this is going to be... This is such a bad looking little widget, honestly, but it's fine. So it looks like this has a maximum width and it's allowed to shrink when it gets a little bit smaller. Okay, so we're going to have no border R anymore. We're going to have this. This doesn't need to say Bitcoin price anymore. We're going to have an element here, and this is where we're going to have a select. And we'll just make this really simple, kind of naive. Do they say BTC? Yeah, even though it's XBT. Okay. So that's obviously not right, but we'll get there. This width 1/3, I think we can actually just make this like flex 1 so that it's allowed to grow. Text center doesn't need to be there. Okay. We have some padding on this element. I think it's got to match the above one, which is what? To be 6 there or 4? 6. Okay. All right. And we kind of want this to not look as terrible, right? So maybe we can figure that out. So we want this to be probably items center. And then we probably want to give this control some styling so it's not as awful. Now, styling select boxes is not a fun task. So I'll show you what we're going to do. I challenged myself one day to come up with a way to style a select box without writing CSS, like a custom select. And I was able to achieve this. So we're going to copy that. And I can explain how it works if you want. LTC. Okay, so basically the idea is you have a select menu. You set it to appearance none so that you can control the styling of it, because if you don't disable the browser's default style on the select box, you can't do things like add padding to it and stuff reliably. So by setting it to appearance none, you can style it just like any other element. Is there still slate in here? Oh my fucking god. All right, text gray. Is there any other slates? I have a PR open to fix all that. That was an old naming convention. So anyways, we set it to appearance none so we can style it like a regular div. But the problem is that the chevron disappears then, like the up and down things. So here I create an element with pointer events none so that it's not affected by mouse clicks. So my mouse clicks go through to the child element, and I put an SVG chevron in there. Normally you would do this with like a background image or something. So we want to get rid of this shadow. And we don't need this width. And then if we expand this, I feel like this should be allowed to shrink, maybe. I think we can get rid of this div and this div. We'll allow shrinking on this. So we'll say flex, shrink. But maybe we'll give it a maximum width that's a little bit bigger. So we could say like width 64 or something. And this one that's set to flex 1, I think we just actually want this to be flex grow. Flex no shrink. And instead of width 64, I think we could probably just get away with like width 32. Yeah, so now it'll shrink as it gets closer to there, which mimics this really heinous behavior here. But on bigger screens, it's fine. So this is actually still really grim. So we might want to change this to, instead of being a small screen thing, maybe this becomes a medium screen tweak. So instead of being SM hidden, let's make it MD hidden and MD flex. And we probably want to do the same up here. Yeah, even that is like kind of ridiculous. But again, it's tricky because Coinbase just doesn't handle that. They just make it horizontally scroll. So that might be something to work out down the road. It's kind of too much design thinking for me right now. But I mean, that's pretty decent. So let's add the this sort of deal here. So let's just copy these values. And we'll stick that underneath this div. So we need an up arrow, so we can probably grab it in typo 1. Come on, click, 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 click. Arrow bold. There's no thin arrows, eh? I think we'll just roll with this arrow, maybe. It won't be perfect, but it's okay. We're just trying to get close. So let's just see what that looks like. Obviously terrible. So we'll add a text green. It's probably just green is probably good. Maybe we can go green light. A little inaccessible probably, but it's probably not too bad. And let's just make that arrow not so terrible. So we'll do flex, item center, so that we can get this SVG to be center aligned with this element. We'll give this a class of like H4, W4, fill current. And maybe a little bit of right margin. And maybe we make this whole thing slightly smaller. So it's not perfect, but it's close. This view sucks. We could cheat that by just changing our medium queries to probably being large ones. But I think I'm just going to leave it for now. Okay, so pretending that these charts don't exist. Our next sort of thing to look at is this 2 sets of cards at the bottom. So we've got a Your Portfolio card and then a Recent Activity card. Is that up arrow nicer? You are. Oh yeah, way better. Okay. Beautiful. There we go. Thank you.
So we don't need flex center and all that crap here anymore. We don't even need this span. So that's simplified that. Cool. Nice tip. Okay, so a grid with 2 cards. Let's do it. So this is our, okay, perfect. Okay, so we need a flex, dot flex wrap, because they have to wrap on smaller screens. Dot negative mx4, because we're going to have multiple columns with padding here, because there's gutters. Okay, so there's like our row. And then we need columns. So the columns are going to be like W1/2, which this emit won't expand that, which is annoying, but it is what it is. PX4, duplicate that. We'll just kind of see what we got here. Okay, so there's our kind of 2 columns now. And these are going to be cards very similar to what we had before, but the cards are going to be inside these now. Okay, so here we're going to have a .bg white, .rounded, dot border element. Always refreshing the wrong thing. Okay. And Coinbase is like almost down, so I gotta be careful not to refresh. So we need some margin underneath there. That looks like it's the same margin that we had on the top of the container, which is 6. So underneath this div, let's add an MB6, since that's sort of controlling. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. All right, let's take a sip of Coca-Cola Zero. All right, so your portfolio. Seems like it could be like an H3 or something like that, maybe. So there's a header with an H3 that says your portfolio. There's a container underneath that that has our portfolio in it. This is going to be text blue dark. It's probably like a PY4. Maybe not quite that much in this case, but oh, it's really bold looking. Font normal. Text large. Same padding that we had out there, PX6. Looks like we can go back to that 4 now. Everything's kind of proportional. All right. So this div is going to have a bottom border. And then we have like 3 sections for our portfolio stuff. So now in structuring this, there's 2 ways we could do it. We either have div, 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 or you could kind of treat this as a container, because it kind of feels like this is something where you'd loop over stuff. So part of me wants to put that in an extra wrapper, even though it's not fully necessary. So I think I'm going to do that. It just feels like the correct structure to me. So here we're actually going to set this to flex, justify between again. Oh, fuck's sake, always refreshing the wrong thing. Okay, we got a div, and we got list and chart. And this is honestly the same crap that we have up with our hours and minutes stuff. So this is actually like pretty close to the point where it seems wise to me to create component classes for some of this stuff, but I'm not going to bother just yet. It's kind of like a refactoring phase, because we're repeating this sort of thing over and over again, right? There's so many situations where we have the same sort of link style. So it seems logical to create an abstraction for that to me. And I think we actually have this on the wrong element. Okay. And this one probably has margin on the right that it doesn't need. Okay. Okay, and one of these has to be active. And we need a negative bottom margin probably on this. No, probably here. Always with the more wrappers. Okay, so this can go, this needs to move to here though. And if we're doing it consistently, I think we were doing it by having just the border be its own thing. Okay. It looks like it might be right. We'll have to see once we have some space under here. Probably just do this and see. No, that doesn't look right, does it? Negative bottom margin 1 pixel is not working. Where else do we have negative MB pixel? Price charts. That one seemed to work, didn't it? Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's alright. We'll figure it out. Yeah, why is that not sitting in the right spot? Negative MBPX. Okay, well, no big deal. We can look at it once we flesh it out a little bit more. Okay. All right, so we want to kind of mimic this portfolio looking thing. So this is annoying because it's like one of those ugly tables from hell. Trying to think the best way to do this. I think maybe we just make it like 4 columns. This column looks a little bit bigger though. Anyways, we'll just try. So we'll do a flex box, everyone's favorite. We'll have a dot width 1/4. And I jacked Coinbase's Bitcoin SVG. I didn't feel guilty about that because it's like a brand SVG that they don't really own. So let's just see what we get. Okay, so they're coloring it for us, which I think we will probably want to figure out a way to use our own color. So I think I'm actually going to get rid of this circle element that they have. And we'll get rid of this fill on the path. We'll get rid of this height and width stuff too. Let's just see if we can get this, make sure that my edited SVG is working the way that I wanted it to work. Might need to give this a size, H6, W6. Okay, this group with the fill none, that needs to go. All right, so now we just have like the Bitcoin B. So we could wrap this in a circle ourselves if we want now. So we can just say dot rounded full dot BG orange. Make this display block so it doesn't get all funky. And make this inline flex maybe, so we can center stuff inside of it. This will be text white. So orange is a little bit different, but we're going to want it to match this orange, so it still seems logical to kind of borrow that. So where's the padding coming from? The wrapper element. So I say this element is getting the padding. And the vertical padding could probably go there too. Why not? Okay, so we probably want this more like at least 8. It might need to even be as big as 10. Let's try 10. Too big. Stick with 8. Again, you can customize all these sizes in Tailwind for your specific scales, but we're just trying to keep it simple without having to do too much here. Okay, so after that, it's going to say Bitcoin. This is now going to be a flex container, so we can center all this crap. We'll wrap this in a span. We'll give this a margin right of 2, maybe 3. And it looks like we need this text to be a little bit lighter. Is that the same color for all the text here? Just about all the text except that element. So why don't we just put a text gray darkest up here. Oh. Why does this look purple to me? We might be able to even just go darker. Yeah, it seems okay. And we want to go larger. And is that the same font size for the whole thing? Looks like maybe. Let's try text large. Okay, cool. So this section is trickier to style. If you're actually going to do this, I'm trying to think like how you would do it. And really, you're just kind of setting it's like a width on the element, but it could be done in other ways. It's not a progress bar. What's the best way to do this? I'm trying to think like how you would do it if you were actually implementing it from the server, because it's going to be mathematical, right? Like you're going to have to basically have a percentage, and I think you might be able to use like flex. I don't know. I'm not sure what the smartest way to do that would be. Either way, though, you're going to have something like a div with like a BG orange and like a H2. That's rounded full. And then, yeah, it'd be percentage width, but the problem is it's percentage of what, right? Because you don't want it to be a percentage of this whole thing. So it's almost like you need it to be like a maximum of 50%, I guess. So it'd be like width, 100, width value times 50% or something. But it's no big deal for us. I don't know. We'll just kind of fake it. So naturally, we need to make this flex item center too. And seems okay. How much Bitcoin do I have in this account? $21 worth. 0010. I made a Coinbase account just for this demo. And I think we're going to want to do items baseline for all of these. And that didn't work. because of this one. Okay, we'll go with center. So these are right aligned. And then this one too. Which is also going to be right aligned. Although, you know what? I think it makes more sense to make another element here, because we need padding as well. Damn, my text editor skills are weak today. Alright, and this needs to be like text gray light or something like that. Nope, gray. Something like that. Okay, we'll just roll with that for now. And we'll just duplicate this whole container 3 times. And I guess they need bottom margin or bottom borders. And I got some other logos we can pop in here. So we'll take the Ethereum logo, which really we just want this path element, because otherwise it's the same as the Bitcoin one. So let's just see what that looks like. Changed the wrong one, so that's always great. Paste that here, cut that one. Okay, and the Ethereum one is indigo. Text indigo. And it looks like we need to move Litecoin into the middle if we want to really nail our Coinbase clone here. What did I mess up here? I need to set the background color, not the text color. Although I'm surprised that that didn't. Oh, it's because this probably already has a fill. Okay. No biggie. All right, BG indigo. Nope. Okay. Need to spell it right. It's always helpful. And it's 0% since I have none of it. So we'll just style it as a circle here. So we'll just do like width 2. Again, you'd figure out a way to kind of do this dynamically in the real world. So that could be an exercise for another time. Now this spacing is sort of bugging me. I think our text is too big. I think everywhere where we have text LG here, it shouldn't be text LG. And it should only be on this stuff here. I wonder if I can grab these intelligently. Yeah. So I think like the actual coin is a bigger font. Now, I guess I could add some padding to the inside of that column maybe. Trying to recreate tables with Flexbox is always really painful. It probably would have been better to do this as a real table. But what can you do? It's grab our Litecoin SVG. Grab this path. Okay, so here. Hopefully I'm doing the right one. Oh, fuck me. Did the wrong one again. And it looks like maybe even this has a different view box. No, 38. And this has a view box of 32. Okay, so we're going to have to copy this whole SVG. And rejig it a little bit. Copying this class. Get rid of the width and height. Oh, there's a duplicate class attribute, which we don't want. And I bet you I have that on the other ones too, right? Yep, get rid of that. Okay, so now we don't want fill none here. We don't want this circle. And otherwise I think we're good. This is Litecoin. And what color is Litecoin? Gray. BG gray. Seems good enough. Okay. And let's copy our Ethereum stats. So this is LTC. It's going to be gray. Yeah, decent. All right, so let's get this footer area done quickly, and then we can do this little blank slate area over here. And then maybe we'll just call it a day because we've been going for almost 2 hours. So let's do this footer. So that's going to be here. Class px6 py4 dot text center dot text gray. Total balance is whatever I have, 2128. Does anyone know how to make the squiggly equal sign with HTML entities? Seems possible. Squiggly equal sign. HTML approximate equals. Seems fine. Let's grab that. Yeah, beauty. Async. Nice. Add that to my list of new knowledge today. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duplicate this entire Your Portfolio card. And we'll use that as the basis for our... Man, when things are not indented properly, it can be scary. You don't know if you're missing closing tags and stuff like that. I think we're good. Okay. So this goes away. This becomes recent activity. All the content in here goes away. So does this footer. Okay. And now we get to put like a cool rocket ship in there. So I did grab a rocket ship icon from ntypo, which is not quite the same, but it'll have to do. So we don't need a border B class on this one. Let's give this a class of fill current text gray, maybe like H12, W12. Refreshing the wrong thing again. Let's go with 16 maybe. We might even have to go up to like 20. That'll be okay. Okay, so let's do like a dot text center. An extra wrapper here. And this SVG will go in its own block level container. We'll make it display inline blocks that it'll inherit the centering. We'll give this whole container pretty huge padding. Probably the horizontal padding should stay the same, but the vertical padding looks a lot higher. So PX6 and then maybe like PY8. Still could be bigger than that, but I don't want to create new values. So in here we'll have a p tag, no buys or sells yet. Text 2XL, text gray dark, darker. MB4 or something on here. You successfully linked a payment method and can start buying digital currency. Payment method and can start buying digital currency. Okay, so that's going to have to be text gray dark, probably something like that. And it's going to have to be narrower, so maybe like a max width extra small. Small? Extra small. A little bit too small. But we'll roll with it. MX Auto. MB2. 4. Text gray. Seems okay. I think we can probably bump this up to like font medium. All right, let's add a button underneath there. Put that in a div. Button. Type button. What does it say? Buy now. So this is going to have a bunch of classes on it, like BG blue dark, text white, PX6, PY4. I don't know. Getting pretty buttony. Maybe it's actually just border blue or BG blue. Maybe it's got a border that's blue dark. Maybe it's rounded. It's pretty close. This P tag could use a bottom margin. A little bit more even. Be nice to get some additional padding here. We could cheat it in a way that makes me unhappy. We could do like a PY4 on here to match like the PY that we already have up there, then add like a double whammy of padding so that they're additive. That might get us a little bit closer to that Coinbase look. Oh, you know what? Someone mentioned that these are supposed to look like the same height, right? So this should be done with Flexbox. Oh shit, I lost a border up here. Okay, so these are the same height, and now I'm wondering, I wonder what's making these the same height. I'm guessing it's they're spacing this out to make up for it. So we can do that with Flexbox. I mean, why not, right? Flexbox can do anything. Okay, so let's take a look in the inspector. So if you look here, we've got two elements next to each other. We got this one and this one, right? So this and this are already the same height. So we need this element to be the same height as its parent. We can achieve that by making this display flex, and then making this element flex none. Is that going to do it? No. Flex grow. And obviously we got some weird problems here that we're going to have to consider, which sucks. Okay, so let's just get this encoded here. Flex, flex, grow. It's weird that, let's do flex call here actually. Okay, so now we have like a flex container. That's not right either. This would have to be flex 1. Okay, so now that fills that content. And then we need this thing that's set to flex grow to also be flex call. And then maybe I was right or wrong to add this extra wrapper, because we remove that. I mean, missing another bottom border, so we're going to bring that back. But I think now we can set all three of these to flex grow, and they'll have the same flex grow values, so they should all grow in a column direction equally. Now we have two cards that are the same height. There might be unnecessary styles in there, but that'll do it. All right, so anyways, originally I wanted to do a more complex UI than this, which is hilarious because obviously this turned out to be more complex than we thought. But I would like to finish this off sometime, like adding, showing how this would work and stuff. So I think we picked like a pretty good example. So I think we'll call it there. We'll just kind of commit our work, and I'll probably work on kind of polishing this and coming up with some strategies for handling some of the more complex, annoying parts we ran into. Does this wrap yet? Let's make sure that this wraps. Let's do that quickly. So here where we have width 1/2, let's just make that like MD width 1/2, and normally like width full. We'll do the same thing down here. Width full, MD width 1/2. And now it should stack. And we'd probably want to add some margin and stuff between there. Okay, let's do that quickly. So add MB6, MD, MB0 to remove that on larger screens. Okay, so now things are kind of stacking. And should these have shadows like this one? Yeah, they should. Okay, so we'll also give these shadows. That's not right. Wrong element. This one. Yeah. Okay. So obviously this table is a little bit fucked up, but we can improve that. We don't have these rounded corners like stretching to the edges and stuff like we do for this card. But in general, I think that was like pretty successful in terms of what we were able to accomplish. You know, these are pretty close really, considering we didn't have to write any CSS or anything like that. Obviously it could be improved. Better icons would be nice. Getting the colors closer would be nice. But yeah, I don't know. I think it went pretty well. I think at a quick glance, you probably wouldn't know that this wasn't Coinbase. So anyways, hopefully that was enjoyable. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me and helping me out with little things as I worked on this. And maybe I'll do another one of these tomorrow or something, and we can work on some of the other elements. It's definitely fun stuff. So yep, thanks for coming by, and hopefully see you at the next stream. If you want to get notifications anytime I do these streams, just subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll get an email anytime I go live, in case you're not on Twitter. But otherwise, like, these streams will always be available online to watch after the fact too. All right, see you everyone.